For me, when I was working in care with a young man that was deaf, I had to learn sign language, British Sign Language. And I picked up what I could whilst working, but it wasn't until I went to evenings class, night school, that I understood how a language is put across and how it's taught and how it's learned and how it's broken down into sections. Because when you first think about how am I going to learn a language, it's overwhelming with different people's ideas and different ways at starting a language. Hello, welcome back. English Podcast with Paul. Thanks for joining me. Please take a seat, turn up the dial and get comfy. All right, so where to start when you want to learn a language is often the first thing you think about. You know, you might understand a few phrases, but generally when you're serious and you want to know more about a language and how to conquer it, how to, take little step by little step, but know you're making progress and not just stabbing in the dark. As I said just now, that going to night school and seeing the teacher having subjects and topics and it all broken down into what becomes kind of obvious or what you think you should learn, what you think you should know first. And a lot of that is reflected, as I'll explain later, in the way we teach children, or rather the way children learn. So there's a couple of different ways to look at this or to break this up. So one way to break this up is saying what part is active. All right. So you want to start A1 level. You want to be active. You can start with chapters. So the chapters of the book or the chapters that you sort of go through would often be something like common phrases. So you might say, oh, I've already learned this, hello, my name is Paul, this kind of thing. But breaking it down a bit smaller, you might go to greetings first. So expanding a bit more on just the first thing you've learned. So you might have a couple of pages on different greetings and responses. Various different responses. Because as you know, in the UK here, it's very rare that we say, hello, my name is Paul. That's not normal in most cases in the UK. Often say, hi, all right, how's it going? Things like this, very casual, flippant remarks of acknowledgement towards another person. So you could become more formal with your greetings. Maybe you meet your girlfriend's parents. Maybe you meet a police officer or somebody in authority. So your greetings become a little bit more professional. Maybe that's not the right word. A little bit more... what's the word I'm looking for? Formal. That's the word I wanted. Formal. See? Even I forget words. Right, okay. So you start with greetings. And then you might move on to prepositions. Like on the sofa, behind the sofa, in the tree, on the bus. Things like this nature. To help visualize where in the sentence or where something might be or where you might be going. All right. So to put order in this world in your head of these words and phrases you're learning, to help put an order together, we next sort of move on to prepositions. And then other things like that after that might be other subjects such as work or school or the weather. Things that we'd normally talk about quite casually and quite relaxed to people we've met. So you've moved on past, hi, my name's Paul, to now you might say something like, oh, it's very hot today. Also after that, you'd move on to to other topics. Maybe you talk about numbers and colors, because again, that it helps expand your conversation. When you talked about the weather, you might want to say that it's 24 degrees or something like that to help make a more deeper, colorful conversation. So then after your subjects, you move on to maybe common phrases like, are you from round here? Do you have any brothers and sisters? And things like this. So those subjects are broadening out. So you got like work, school, weather, family, colors, numbers, things like this. So you're broadening your potential conversations. Okay. Then you might look at something like colloquial phrases. So although in your own country you might always say a particular phrase, in a new country that you're going to, they might not never say that. They might have a different phrase. Like Soksabay, Sai Sabok. In Cambodian, that's like, you alright? And then as a bit of a joke, you say the same thing backwards, just as a bit of fun. Soksabay, Sai Sabok. So you learn much more colloquial phrases, things that people say in that town, in that place. And like I say, it can be very different to your own. And then maybe you go on to something a little bit broader, a bit more expansive again, where you talk about who or what, where, when, why. All right, so expansion again, a little bit broader. So every time you learn a new aspect of the language or subject, it gets broader and broader and broader. Your knowledge and your ability to converse, it becomes a little bit more interesting. Because at the beginning, it's sometimes difficult to talk to somebody that has a very limited vocabulary or limited understanding. And then so it moves on further and further, times and dates, appointments. And then you move up from A1 to A2 and B1, B2. As much as effort and time and energy that you want to put into it, how important it is to you. So motivation. Which now leads me on to the next part, would be more of a passive way at dealing with it or consuming the language. So you got things like listening to the radio, and you kind of hear patterns. The news will come on, and then maybe there'll be ringing up a quiz show. Hey, blah blah blah. No, hey, no. And you go, I know what this is. They're ringing up, and they're talking about something, and then the other person is chatting in as well. And then there's a song, and right. And if you keep listening, you'll find out you understand the patterns of like, oh, hello, how are you? Where are you today? And these same sort of things on your local radio is probably actually happening on their radio in that country, which is really kind of bizarre, kind of funny. But then there's also your favorite music in that language. Some of my favorite songs, Spanish songs, I bought and downloaded on my phone, and I listen to sometimes just because I really dig the song and the music and the rhyming. And when I visit, I often put that music on and they go, oh, you like this music too? I'm like, yeah. And oh, that music is so old. I'm like, oh, okay. And then there's your favorite films and TV shows in that language. Definitely makes consuming so much easier. All the time you're absorbing, and your brain is passively taking in this. And then like a baby, when you go to sleep, your brain is trying to understand it and unpackage some of these confusing phrases and words, and it all just slowly happens behind the scenes. Bit by bit, it builds like putting a puzzle together. You start with the corners and then the edges, and then you pick a color or something, and it slowly starts to fill in. All right. So the next part on from that then would be if you want to pay. You start paying extra money. So here you might be looking at a teacher, paying a teacher, and then focusing on maybe grammar, maybe focus on sentence structure, This is where it starts to get a bit more mind messing. Again, you need time to allow your brain to digest it and to work it out. And so it may take a number of weeks or months for it to digest into your stomach or into your brain and then build up that picture. Also, you might have to start thinking about masculine and feminine. And then when you want to move on from that up another level, you can start thinking about teaching somebody else at a much lower level. So maybe you might want to teach your sibling or a child something simple in that language. Because the more you're able to teach it, the more you understand it yourself. And I think it was Einstein that said, you only understand something if you can tell it and teach it to a child. I thought, wow, that's pretty clever, isn't it? If you can, coming from Einstein, telling you that if you can teach it to a child and explain it to a child, then you really, really do understand it, because you're able to break it down and explain to somebody else that you know it. Wow. All right. And then on from there, you can create your own stories and create your own maybe songs or poetry. Maybe you could look at, grading your levels up, and really get into some deep conversations. Maybe you could veer off into a particular subject, maybe your profession at work. Maybe you could get into, I don't know, like a lawyer or quantitative surveyor or builder. You could focus down into a particular industry. And so a lot of it, funnily enough, is replicated in the way that children learn. Children, and this is obvious when you get a good teacher. A good teacher will correct you by reiterating or regurgitating the correct way of saying it. So, for example, if you said, the dog mat on the sat, you'd say, okay, yeah, the dog sat on the mat. Or, the windows were clean today. And then maybe you'd reiterate that sentence back the correct way. But that's exactly what parents do. And a teacher, a good teacher, when a child says something wrong, they just say it correctly again and again and again and again. So the child's brain would just think, oh, I got to say it like that. I'll repeat what they've said. And it's literally just repeat the correct way of saying it. And it slowly absorbs into the body, into the brain, and it becomes normal and natural because it's so frequent. And that's basically it in a nutshell. And you can cut and paste that same theory of learning. Of course, you've got to do the work. You've got to put in the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of listening and repeating and getting it wrong and being corrected and growing and stretching and trying. Just a little bit at a time, little steps. They say 10 to 20% of your comfort zone is where you grow the best. So you can cut and paste the same theory for each language, whether it's sign language, whether it's Spanish, whether it's Russian. It's the same ideology, starting at the bottom, baby steps, bit by bit by bit by bit. All right. If you learn a different way, if you prefer a different way of absorbing or understanding a subject or a topic, then let me know in the comments. I'd be very interested to find out. But that's it for this one, just a short one. Again, we're just before Christmas. So if I don't see you before, happy Christmas. Take care. Bye-bye for now.